All righty. Looks like everybody's gotten their lunch, so I'm going to go ahead and make the formal introduction. This is Jeanette Renshaw. She is partner and managing director at GrowthX, which is an organization that helps startups and early stage businesses put their go-to-market strategies together and get to revenue. I've worked with Jeanette for, I don't know, 8 years-ish. So we brought her in to speak to some of our entrepreneurs when I was at Purdue, and then also again at the Heritage Group to talk with hard tech founders, which is always a struggle when you're in that deep tech space trying to figure out how to get to revenue fast when you need millions of dollars to even get an MVP going. So she's sort of brilliant at getting people to really think through how they get to revenue so that they can show traction, so that they can raise money. But even if you're not looking to raise money, you obviously need to get to revenue as fast as you can, and you need to have a really strong understanding of who your customer is. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeanette. I'm super excited to have her here, and I hope you guys enjoy this.
Thank you, Ashley. All right. I feel like I'm probably loud enough inherently for this whole room, but the audio sounds good, yeah? You good? All right, cool. Super happy to be here with you guys. Thank you for such a thorough intro. I'll give you a little more context from the perspective I'm speaking from, so you know where my expertise lies. But my goal today is to make this really tangible and helpful for you. I guess just a straw poll to see who our room is. How many people are founders or in a sales capacity at a company that's maybe early stage? All right, keep your hand up if it's B2B. Cool. And then anyone who didn't raise their hand that doesn't fit that bucket, what else are we sharing as far as perspectives? Yeah.
I have an idea and I want to work out.
Hell yeah. Other non-hand raisers, anyone else that is coming for a different perspective? All right. These principles are really transferable. And so whether you're even just curious or have other friends or founders or people that you're working with or networking with that might, benefit from hearing some of this themselves, great. Spread the good word is what I usually say, because sales is often a black box, and it doesn't have to be. It lacks a lot of infrastructure, namely in academia. Meet any sales majors lately? And that doesn't mean that they'd be ready to hit the streets or have stage-relevant details around sales, but if you think about what academia serves to do, it's lots of frameworks and experience and different understandings that give you a baseline to jump off from when you get to the real world and the street smarts of this analogy, and then you can apply things. So without that, it's a black box that then gets even further black boxy with the specificity of where you're entering the market and the uniqueness of market entry versus, let's say, a more mature company. And a lot of the companies we either experience sales from or can observe their sales or their customer interactions are big name brands or consumer-oriented brands. And so we don't have a lot of chops around what does good early stage B2B selling look like. So to give a little bit more on the perspective I'll be speaking from, I do predominantly work with B2B companies. That also includes business to government, multi-sided marketplaces, distributors like B2B2C and the like. I don't claim to know everything about the B2C world, as there are plenty of interesting and unique distinctions, but I also have plenty of what we're talking about today is transferable if you're in the B2C landscape. It looked like most of us were B2B, which is dope. And when I say early stage, because that could mean anything except for really late, I usually mean pre-Series A. I realize that's a venture milestone. You don't have to be raising venture. It's just, that's what I mean as far as early, where for some people, anyone in any kind of venture round is still somewhat early. So let's dive in together. I secretly call this my product market fit workshop, but most people think they understand product market fit, and a lot of founders think they have it. And then when I meet them, we kind of demystify that, and we may or may not actually have that. And so I've learned that if I say I'm going to teach you this, people are like, I don't need that. But once they hear the content, it's irrelevant to what I call it, and they often do need it and really benefit from the learning. If I make that kind of supposition at the beginning and you feel differently by the end, I would love to know. And I mean that very sincerely. It's not like a test Jeanette and tell her she's wrong. It's like, that's my purpose here, to make it valuable for you. So if I ever miss that mark, I truly do want to know. Another thing I'll point out is that I'm very easy to find, and one of the leave behinds I'll give you is just an offer to follow up if there's stuff you're working on that I can be helpful with. So Jeanette at GrowthX is how you'd find me. I also have the Jeanette Renshaw market cornered on LinkedIn and the like. So, yeah. All right, let's dive in. So GrowthX company I'm with today was founded 10 years ago. Woo. And we were founded because we hated this number. This is a really sad, aggressive number of startup failure rate. It changes slightly over time, but it's all really high. And that blows. And when there's lots of surveys and things done to assess why is this so high, where are people going wrong, what can we do to help, as entrepreneurial support ecosystems? And the answer is almost always some form of like, no market need, or something kind of like loose like that. Well, thankfully, I rarely, if ever, meet founders that are building something that no one needs. Like, if you're a founder, like all of you raise your hand sharing this perspective or knowing enough about it, you don't put that much time, effort, money, sacrifice, your whole life, like everything into a business to just guess at a nothing that doesn't really have a fit for someone. So it's not that most people are just building crap for no one. No market need can imply that. What it often is a lack of sales ability before runway runs out. We're trying our damnedest to get to the right people, to find fit with our solution, to accomplish sales and build revenue and grow our runway. And that's a hard thing to do, especially when it's a black box of how do I even approach that. So that's our passion at GrowthX. Let's demystify that black box. Let's help give a tangible roadmap to finding those sales and those initial customers and something that's repeatable and usable so that you have a chance in hell to grow beyond the early stages with the highest failure rate and ultimately avoiding this stat long term. So that was our passion when we started the company, and it remains our passion today. But a lot of other things have changed in the landscape, not just in the last 10 years, but even before that. And this is pretty understood at this point, but it's worth calling out. So if we think way back, I'll call this the age of applied technology today. But if we look back, we had really burdensome and expensive ways to build, namely software or technical solutions. Like 20, 30 years ago, how much money do you have or how much acumen do you have as a computer scientist to build software, namely? And if you had enough money to build it, that was really like how you got into entrepreneurship in the technical space. Now, we can build so fast with low-code, no-code platforms. We can jump off. We can have very little revenue, or rather money or funding, and build something that gets to an MVP that can be sold or tested in the market, way beyond a napkin drawing or even a prototype or a wireframe. And so when we can do that much faster today, that means the market of competitiveness in entrepreneurship and how many people are out there and how many new things are getting spun up and how noisy that whole crowd is much different. And especially as it pertains to an investment landscape. How many different founders are you competing for investment from, or with rather, from your investors or potential investors? And so in that light, now we really have to differentiate ourselves even further, not just for our customers and for sales, but to our investors to earn their capital amongst a bunch of other options. And now the differentiator has really shifted to, how can I demonstrate my sales? How can I demonstrate my sales? And so when you can show that you can sell, and you can win sales, and you can do it systemically and repeatably, you are really setting yourself apart as a potential investment, because that's where we know as investors, as the background of GrowthX is, we were venture capitalists first and go-to-market experts. We started deploying what now is our core offering for our fund only, just like an exclusive inside offering. It was going really well. We hated that big startup failure rate. We thought, let's share the love with more people. We can be helpful out here. We don't need to keep this in-house. So we grew beyond our fund, and now we're able to help B2B founders all over the world demystify sales. And so our methodology behind how we do that is helping. We lead with help. We work in nascent startup ecosystems. We're not opposed to working in any ecosystem, but we specifically serve the Indianas, the Nashvilles, the Milwaukees, the Alberta, Canadas. We are even in like Western New York because it's different than the city, and that ecosystem is entirely different in how it's supported. And we try to help give the right resources to the right founders and entrepreneurial startup organizations so that we can demystify sales and people have a much higher likelihood of success. Because we're not really competing with each other as much as we think we are. There's lots of capital out there that honestly needs deployed, and if you're looking for it, it's about positioning yourself accordingly to have access to it. So, together we rise, after leading with help, is our mantra. Now, circling back to where I started this thing, with product market fit, a fun phrase that we all know and totally have. No, I know some of you would say we don't have product market fit, and you'd be the first to admit it, and that's great. There's nothing good about lying to yourself about your actual status of your go-to-market journey or your sales motion today, Because then how can we improve on something that's already really dialed in? And we're safe here. Like all I do all day is work with early stage companies. But one of the things that's mystifying about product market fit is not a lot of good definitions out there. A lot of like tweetable wisdom. Would it be Xable wisdom? Whatever, I digress. And so it's like, you'll know it if you have it, and if you're not sure, you probably don't have it. How helpful is that? It's not. So let me just get you guys involved a little bit. I know you're eating, and I won't make you talk a long time. Anyone want to take a stab at what product market fit means to them? Go ahead.
I don't know what I've learned. Don't try to build something you want to sell, build something people want to buy.
Build something people want to buy versus what you want to be selling. Cool. Other thoughts? Yeah.
So we always used to say fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Super important to understand everything there is to know about the problem that you're looking to solve from that customer's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Deep, deep problem knowledge. Yes.
One from a different life was you can't keep up with the inbound.
When you're flooded with inbound, you may have product market fit. Spoiler alert, we're going to take that one off the table, but I appreciate it's out there. Like these are the things that people often say. It's sort of like, another tenet people sometimes tell me about product market fit is we have X dollars in sales. We have X many customers. We can do this many sales even if they're all different. They wouldn't say it like that, but I unpack it and it tends to be sort of different. So all of that to say, that's not helpful. Not your suggestions, which thank you for those who participated, but just the phrase that we all are like aspiring towards without a clear definition of like, am I there? Am I close to there? Will I be there soon? What do I do to get there? Not helpful. And like, again, our passion is to make sales really understood and manageable and tangible. So let's put some framework around this. And what this isn't is like, GrowthX knows the answer. These are the tenets of product market fit, end all be all. It's just something to grip onto. So first, and almost inarguably the most important, narrow customer and use case. If I could do more text editing on the word narrow or narrowly without it looking really unprofessional, I would. It would be like bold, italicized, underlined, highlighted, like all of the crazy things. Maybe it's doing one of those like text message, like giant reach out, big font for a second kind of things. Narrowly is the number one missed thing when it comes to this defined customer and use case. I meet tons of founders who say, I know who my customers are. I know who my ideal customer profile is. It's finance. That's an industry. It's an entire industry with lots of subsegments and hierarchies and delineations and stuff. Or they might be a little more specific. It's senior care. Also an industry, and they might have several industries. Or they might have several titles. Well, it could be the CEO, the COO, the CRO. It could be any of the C-suite people. Ooh, they're all the same, aren't they now? So sales in a nutshell is a terrible rap, right? Like we have all the analogies out there, like used car salesmen and stuff, but we just have an ick that comes about us when we're like engaging in sales or someone's selling us. My passion is also to help early stage founders, like you don't have to be the ick. Sales does not have to come with ick. It can be really helping in the world and actually bringing something a solution that's valuable to the people that need it and have the problem most. So what we're doing is we're seeking fit. And one way to think about how you do sales without becoming the person that you would hate to sell you is come correct. If someone's approaching you with sales, you would want them to understand what they're walking into. You want to know why they're there with you and why not just everyone. Are you just a silly person that gave them your time? Or did they find you for a reason and they chose you for a reason and there's a specific fit here that you think you already have a hypothesis around that you then want their feedback on, but you've come prepared to use their time wisely and you have an inkling of their world because you want to respect their time, and that shows through the conversation. Those are easy things to say and not exactly effortless to do. But when done well, sales feels really different. And if there's ever a time for feeling different and coming correct with sales, it's in the earliest of stages. I'll never forget my joyful time at a public company where I was given a specific number of customers that I could sell, like prospects, and a specific quota. And I just had to make it work within this bucket. End. That was it. So I had to find a way to sell all of them to hit my quota, or I was in trouble. That's not as fun. You have the world in front of you, and if you're raising venture and you've made an investment deck, your TAM, your total addressable market, is likely some equivalent of world domination. There's nothing wrong with dreaming big and demonstrating to your investors that you have a very large market opportunity. That's not the hard part. Entering the market is the hard part. Finding that initial footing in your most niche area of optimized entry is the hard part. And that's what this is. We're going to talk about this a lot today. Surprise. All right, next. Stickiness. We can hustle our way to sales, but will they last? You know, the inverse being churn. So if I hustled my way to Ashley, who shared with you earlier, we've known each other for years, and I had a solution, I was like, please just give it a try. She might bend my way as a friend and institute it at Launch Fishers and try to share whatever I'm working on as a solution. But if it's not really a fit, Ashley's probably not going to last forever in that role. The company and the entity and community here at large may not need or really feel the benefit. So is it really a fit, or is it just a sale I kind of hustled my way to? And the secret is, if I took it away, would Ashley be pissed? And if not, I have a problem. Because whether she's, in this fictional example, going to keep my solution I made up in-house because of our friendship and the commitment she made signing a contract or whatever, that's nice, but that's not repeatable because I don't know Ashley's at every equivalent, and I don't have an understanding of what would be the value here. The value is she's being nice to me, and maybe there's some little bit of value that trickles out. But if I took it away, it'd be like, well, we tried to help Jeanette. It's a bad reason. If your solution is valuable and it's in the ideal customer's hands for enough time for them to feel that value, which for some of you is almost instant, and others it takes a little time to warm up to a solution and start to have it return the value it can generate for you. But you give them that time, and they start to feel it, and they're using it, and then you take it away. They should be pissed. You just told me I could have all these efficiencies, or I could have this much cost savings, or whatever the value proposition at core is, and now you're taking it away from me? Like, why would you do that to me? If they're indifferent, it's problematic, because we don't know the value. And that's the third tenet. Why are they pissed? What is it that we were doing for them in the nitty-gritty that they don't want to let go of now? What is the value delivered? What is the delta between the old state before they knew about me and my solution and the state now that they have it and are feeling it? And then how well do I understand it? You know, to Ashley's point on the product market fit thing, how well do I understand the problem and what I'm doing towards that problem? The needs and the impacts of my solution. So, very narrow person, very consistent use case, going to have staying power once it's there, and I understand why. And then I can do that again in the way that I couldn't just find a bunch of Ashleys I've known for years at other entities, because that's just not how relationships work. I can find other people in similar positions at similar entities. So if there's true fit, in my example using just Ashley and Launch Fishers, then I can find equivalent persons and suppose their needs for their community of members and their kind of organization and the fit that might be therein. And I have transferable principles as much as I have an understanding of a repeatable sales motion. So I'm aiming my arrow at the exact right persons, at the exact right entities that I've defined with intentionality. And then I'm going to use those motions on repeat, and they're going to receive the same type of value as the other entities very similar to them and the people therein. And then the last tenet is a little bit more weeded, so hear me out. There's a lot of metrics, especially in SaaS and go-to-market, for ratios and things you should be doing to have responsible growth. And CAC to LTV is one of them, and it's customer acquisition cost to lifetime value. And in short, like, we need to be efficient with how we get customers compared to how long we have them and how much they might be worth to us, but not at the beginning. I don't know an investor, I don't think I've met an investor that says this metric needs to be optimized for your initial swath of customers, because it doesn't make any sense. You want to be all up in their white gloving acquisition, learning every nuanced aspect of what's working and what's not working, what message is resonating, what's not clicking with them, what needs more enablement for onboarding, what, all of those things that go with a sales process. And so when you're too worried about an optimized process before you even have a working process, what is the point? I could care less if you have the most beautiful, scalable process and you've got all of these technologies of infrastructure that can help you do outreach and onboarding and nurture campaigns and all that stuff, but none of them work. What's the point of scaling if none of it works? Our job is to prove first, how do I do this right? Because what I haven't met is a founder who's like, man, I'm crushing these sales in a repeatable motion. How could I possibly add tools to make this more efficient? This is a really fun and easy problem to solve. The former is not easy. Get in there and get your hands dirty. Figure out what works, and then you get the joy of efficiencies. Repeatable things that work are far more valuable than a scalable system that don't. And I see people building scalable systems and reassuring me it's going to be scalable, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't even know if it's worthwhile yet. Let's do it manually. Because when I say stage-relevant significance of data, it's not scientific data significance, which is often larger data sets and more of a burden to surpass, because it's science and it's a different ecosystem. Stage-relevant and go-to-market journey, a lot of times our significant data is 5 to 12 consistent feedback loop points. I can sell 5 to 12 customers in the same way with a large number of efficiencies of that throughput of the motion, meaning I actually achieve the sale at the end of the day. I don't just earn the combo or go through the process. I test messaging and I get 5 to 12 people say, oh, that resonates with me. Yeah, that's my problem too. You got it right. I'm hitting on something. It's not like an end-all be-all fact, but I'm hitting a narrow part of the market very consistently and I'm getting consistent feedback. Stage-relevant validation. We don't bet our house on it. We take one step forward in the go-to-market journey with that confidence in tow. So, 5 tenets of product market fit, just to help add some criteria to it and give you some grippiness and some reassurance, like it doesn't have to all be built for the future today. First, we must prove it works. So let's get into that first step, which I, spoiler alerted you, is going to be where we focus today. And it's also, just like product market fit, one of the most commonly used terms that is often not done as deep and as fully as I will promote that we should do it. And the reason, frankly, is it's hard. I know. Imagine that. I mean, most founders think it's important, and they get into it, and man, I could make a case for anyone, Jeanette. I could make a case for them over there, that my whole TAM has potential here. That's why they're in your TAM. Like, yes, they do. Good. Who has the most potential? Why them first? So we need to get really, really, really narrow. And one of the ways that I say this, which terrifies people, so I figure we'll lead into this whole topic with it, is when we get narrow enough in the defining of our ICP, ideal customer profile, it usually, if I could snap my fingers and have a magical AI print out a list of all the entities in a B2B world that meet the criteria I've defined so narrowly, it'd be a 2-digit number. 10 to 99-ish. Now, is that a perfect science? No. It's a benchmark. What it isn't is tens of thousands. And what it isn't is 2. But mostly it's not hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, global domination. It's a very small, narrow pocket. And people immediately go, Jeanette, I'll never have success with that low of a volume. Great, yeah, we're not stopping here. We're starting here. Let's start hyper-specific, because what you also don't have a lot of is time to do sales and figure out exactly how you write copy and find messaging. And the function of doing sales is quite burdensome and time intensive. And so you need that time to be spent on the right people. And if we drive a bunch of inbound or just kind of take any opportunity that comes to us that might be in the TAM, and I'm not saying you shut the door on people per se, but especially when we're going out and we're doing our own sales efforts and motions, the more specific and intentional we are, the stronger our feedback loops, the stronger our learnings, the more repeatable we can make a process. So let's do that. Because if we crush the world in our 2-digit number of ideal initial prospects, we grow into market opportunity number 2, or we might go slightly upstream in terms of size of the entity that we serve, because maybe at that point we have enough revenues from the sales we crushed in our market entry target to develop our product a bit more in a feature-rich way that makes us more competitive at a higher level of entity, like maybe a larger one that has more expectations or more towards the enterprise slant. We also might have enough runway to have a longer sales process for those types of entities, and they might want credibility. Well, now we have customers to show them and metrics around how much we've helped those customers. All these things add up. So where we start is very important. Now let's break down a couple of sub-aspects of ICP, because again, I'm here to be tangible. Say that word a lot. I already told you it's arguably, and I won't, this is not arguably. This is the most important part of your whole go-to-market process. And one of the reasons why I said simply is everything else that you need in a go-to-market journey is much easier when this is done well and first. And so I think of go-to-market as sort of an order of operations, but really it's less about how you do everything else. It's more like this first, then else. And what I mean by that is, let's say we want to do messaging or pricing or customer journey mapping or even a competitive landscape. A true competitive landscape is not who else does something like what you do. It's who else is competing with your audience to sell them something similar to what you do. So depending on which audience you're courting, you will have a different competitive landscape. Well, how am I going to figure out what price I should make this at? Because a lot of our solutions today are value-based pricing, or at least an element of it, even if we have hardware and hard costs. Okay, so how much do I charge? Well, maybe I need to figure out the value and work backward. Well, who's getting the value? Well, okay, other factors that go into pricing, like what authority of budget do they have to allocate without a big bureaucratic approval process? Maybe we enter under the $5,000 threshold, and then I earn the right to sell up and have a larger contract because it's easier once I'm in, but that my initial target can approve 5,000 without it being a board approved thing or something that's larger and more burdensome. How would I know that if I didn't know for whom? So when you're a founder or an entrepreneur or a business leader, and you're thinking about all of the things that go into a business, even from like brand and impression to messaging specifically for whom, pricing for whom, journey for whom, support. When is the budget cycle? How often do they like touch points? Do they have critical milestones in their business? Who? You can't do it for your TAM. And if you try, because a lot of founders have to, they force themselves into making a pricing model before they get remotely narrow enough on this to do it well. They're just guessing. They force messaging. It's generic and watered down because it serves everyone and not someone. How much do you love receiving watered down messaging meant for all? Calm down. When I say we come correct, it's not the generic stuff. I speak specifically to a person. I demonstrate I know a day in their life. I explain why I'm here and things that are relevant, not only accurate about their circumstance, but relevant as to why I'm barking in. It's not like, hi, I'm in your inbox. By the way, I know your alma mater. Also, here's my solution. Like, we can't do that. You can, it won't work. No one is impressed by you looking up their alma mater on their LinkedIn or using an AI to scrape it. But they will be impressed if you say relevant facts about them that are true and accurate, that shows you are emailing them and not everyone. And then you connect that to the purpose of you being there and how you explore help and how you help others like them. And that's what we want to be able to do. So it starts with getting narrow as hell, and everything else thereafter gets easier. And that's also why with the 45 minutes of me talking before we get to have dialogue together today, and I still welcome questions along the way, especially if anything needs clarity or we want to bring it home, so don't hesitate to jump in. But like, I focus on this because I can't teach you everything I'd love to share with you about sales and go-to-market in any reasonable amount of time that we have in one day over lunch. But if you get this right, one, my offer to follow up will remain true, and two, everything else gets way easier. Everything else. So one of the things that makes an ICP really quality is in the details, not just in the narrowness, although certainly that. And narrowness can be geography, it can be size of company, it can be industry subsegments, like earlier I said finance. Well, are we doing like banking? Are we doing fintech? Are we doing investment-based? Like there's so many subsegments. So we have to get into those kind of details. But then even when we have a narrowly defined subsegment of an industry with all of those scoping things and more, the next thing you have to realize is they're not all equal. All of the entities that fit in this bucket, this subsegment, they're not the same. Simply, there are some that are going to be best in class and some that are not so much. Every single industry has a spectrum of players. There are some that are priding themselves on staying best in class and they're spending to do those types of things. There are others that are sort of just staying afloat. There are others that have different philosophies about how they run their business. And within specific subsegments, we can get very nitty-gritty on what makes them different. But the challenge to you, no matter what your subsegment is first get narrow and then what makes them different. The truism that they're not equal. They don't all deserve your time equally either. And we're specifically looking at factors of fit, and I'm going to drill in on that a lot. Now, I'm talking about the companies first. And that's because we definitely need to get to the people at those companies. ICP is ideal customer profile, and it's a person. The customer is a person at a company. But until you are narrow enough in your company's segmentation and specificity, you won't know who the person is. So let's say the person is the head of HR. Well, if I have a giant company, the head of HR might be the chief people officer, the VP of HR, something like that. If I have a very small company, I might have the director of HR. I might have a different title. And that person might own almost everything and have like one talent acquisition person. Where a larger company, that person may own a whole swath of middle managers, one for benefits, one for talent acquisition, one for culture and people. And like then I might not need the head of HR. I might need one of those department heads. So like I know where I fit from a department level, but until I get narrow enough with my company entity to know where, like what hierarchy they'd have in their roles, I won't know who it is. And remember, this matters critically. A head of HR that is overseeing, one, a bunch of middle managers within HR, and then a bunch of direct reports underneath that, and has a larger organizational scope. If my solution's around benefits and they have a dedicated benefit department, it doesn't mean they won't be involved, but this is one of many things they do. Where a benefits person is going to be 100% benefits. It's all they do all day, every day. So my focus is more of their focus. Now, it doesn't mean I go talk to them first. There are other factors we consider, but the point is the same. We have an understanding of, am I small potatoes in their world, or am I part of their entire focus? So the smaller company you get, the broader the responsibilities per person, right? You guys are representing generally small companies. You wear a lot of hats. It's a fun game. But in larger companies, you have much more specific responsibilities. This matters. So we get to the people details, but first you have to get narrow with company, and most of the time founders try to do them at the same time, and that makes it all the harder. So again, sort of an order of operations thing. Start here, grow here. And by here, it's like start with the company, grow into understanding the people and the uniqueness therein. And then, like I mentioned earlier, shit is hard. Doesn't happen overnight. If you want to hear about how hard and fun it is, talk to Jim, talk to Shane. These are wonderful alumni in the room that have been through my program, that know me well and know the process. And they will tell you, shit ain't easy, but it gives you clarity. And it's a process that at GrowthX we borrow/steal from the Navy SEALs, and we say slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You can rush into guessing and generalizations and trying to do it all at once, but your investors will not be impressed, and it will be very hard to be repeatable. We need to have things that are consistent, and that requires intentionality and focus and learning and feedback loops. But again, once you start to get a system that works repeatably, making it efficient and doing it more readily and having more resources help you do it is far easier. One of the tried and true unfortunate facts of sales is that we hire sales folks hoping they grow our outcomes, i.e. more revenue, and we really just have more expenses and the same amount of outcomes, or very slow moving outcomes. That's troublesome. And investors are going to look at you and say, if I pour capital into you, are you trying to figure it out? Or have you already figured it out? And when we add people resources with that capital, will they be able to take what you've proven true and execute it themselves? Because we have a framework that works. It's not like the magic of Jeanette doing sales and her slick talking out here. It's not that. It's not transferable. It's just you being charismatic, probably as a founder or business leader, which is lovely, but not helpful when it comes to scaling our results. So this is how I encourage you to think of sales. I mentioned earlier, we're not here to sell. With great success, you can become someday that public company where you can dole out subsegments of like pockets of prospects and say, find your quota within this little pocket. That's way later and it's way harder. Save that kind of fun for when you get there. Right now, you could sell to anyone, so spend your time with the people that want to be learning about your solution and seeking if it's a fit to help them today. And don't shy away from saying, yeah, I'm a founder, not a salesperson, but I am passionate about helping my solution get in the right hands because I want to change the world in this way. I'm passionate about improving this type of problem, and I believe from talking with others that have the same title at companies like you, which I would say specifically, not generically, that you probably have this problem too. And so I thought I'd see if I could help you. We're seeking fit. Yeah.
I'm really digging everything you're saying. You know, my background is sales and marketing, and I say it's two sides of the same coin. You can't have the one-sided coin. It is early in this stage. There's a lot of marketing elements here that don't fit into pure selling. Do you agree or disagree with that, or would love your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So sometimes I fear that I come off anti-marketing, and I'm certainly not. What I am is someone who's here to help stage relevant growth. So what I don't want early stage founders, keep in mind, like if I'm a Series A founder or approaching that, where I've got a lot of investment and growth, this is a sliding scale of implementing marketing as you go. If I'm achieving my first 0 to 10 customers, or even 10 to 20 customers, I probably have much smaller amounts of marketing, or if I don't, I would advise that people don't build more yet. And the fallacy is not that marketing is bad. It's that the principle I want my founders to take today is the most direct path to revenue for the least amount of effort, so that the resources they have on the limited runway they have grow into more revenue and more runway to do more stuff. and ultimately hire more resourcing. So unfortunately, I see people over-rotating towards marketing to keep up with the Joneses. Well, I got to put my blog out every month. Well, I got to write a white paper because I'm in healthcare and they need to see my efficacy. It's like, it's not that those are bad things to do. But I also don't think you're going to have a conversation with the direct prospect that's perfect across the table from you and they're like, you know, just think your website stands to be a little sharper before I'm ready to move forward. You know, the website needs to say what you wrote in that email to me that was compelling is echoed here, not confusingly different. That matters. And then when I go to your LinkedIn, it's the same vibe, not confusingly different. But if they say, I need a one-sheeter after this call, you might say, how about I write you something custom about what we talked about and what I think our next steps are, and like talking about it more specifically, and it might just be an email. Because I see founders spend tons of time on, especially collateral they build, that doesn't move the needle yet. And it's also like the tactics of sales where you incorporate collateral in an effective way to drive sales forward and build interest and educate communities and stuff. Those are like, marketing is slightly more indirect in most use cases than sales when you're going direct in the most efficient path. So I think just like I would prescribe people be thinking about sales before they even have a product ready to commercialize and sell, like the gentleman that shared he was at an idea stage, start thinking about that now. Start thinking about marketing when you're going through direct sales motions. What kind of assets might help here but not cloud the waters? But my general take and what I coach to salespeople is, I have a blog. I recommend you have a blog. It's a good thing to do. It helps keep your name out there. I like posting on LinkedIn. We have an interesting following of our community. It's not where our leads come from immediately. It's more of keeping us top of mind when I speak at a conference and then it's not time, but I might come back into the, you know, relevant time frame later. So generally it's stage relevant needs, and we pull marketing up sooner when it does move the needle circumstantially, which varies by industry and expectation. Do you agree? Okay, cool. It's like, yeah, I have a lot of really awesome conversations. I have tons of marketing friends who sometimes will be like, you know, I'll say that in like passing and they'll hear me speak and like, okay, I'm glad you talked that out. Because at first I was like, she hates marketing. And I was like, I don't, you know, I'm for it. So we're going direct. And I usually tell people just to bring that little sidebar home, like things you need as table stakes. You need a website. You probably need a company LinkedIn page. It doesn't have to have a lot of fluff on it. It just needs to have consistent messaging across your personal company LinkedIn page and website, and then in your email copy or any copy you send out or create, whether it's formal or just written in form of an email. If that's a consistent voice and you have a website that isn't distractingly bad or unfinished, and you have a domain-based email, let's go. I have one company I'm working with right now who's a physician by trade, and he's wonderful, and he's made a solution that's wonderful, and he's having a lot of success with sales. And I'm like, you gotta stop using your Gmail, man. Like, and because he's such a well-respected doctor, and he has such a good reputation in the industry, he's been able to kind of skate by longer than I've seen most anyone else. I'm like, no one is batting an eye at your personal Gmail driving your business. But he's finally gonna bite the bullet. He's in the middle of a rebrand, so I've been pushing, like, now's the time, make the domain. But yes. Otherwise, you don't need a lot to have effective sales because no one's picking up a one-sheeter and going, where's my wallet? Am I gonna have time? You know, like they don't jump to action. And we're gonna get into a little bit as to why that is and why we need to think about it. So on our way to those details, which is like my absolute favorite part of this whole talk, maybe, yeah. One of the things I wanna demystify as well is size of funnel. In most cases, pulling back the investor curtain a bit, it don't mean shit, because we don't trust you. And I say that so affectionately. I have millions of dollars in my funnel. Yeah, and what's our throughput rate? You know, how many of these deals are closing? Also, how much time are you spending managing all of those deals in your funnel? That sounds exhausting. How many of them are real? How many of them are fully qualified? What's the conversion rate through the stages? If you can speak with an investor, you should have a more thorough conversation about the funnel criteria and what would wow the pants off of an investor or anyone, or even just for yourself in your management of said funnel. Do not bloat it. Just the real things, just the real and active things, to be clear. Things don't hang out there for when they might come back around someday. Put them somewhere else and put a reminder for yourself to keep in touch with them on the side. Funnel is real things right now. You have this much time to do sales, and whether it's this much or this much, it's not enough. So we want to spend our time with the right people. And if you tell an investor, hey, this funnel might not be as big as some of the other folks you meet, but let me tell you what, it's the realest one you're going to see. Here's my conversion rates through the funnel. Here's my level of certainty when it enters. They're going to be like, holy shit, can you back that up? Yes, I can. I have the data. It's not going to be a giant amount of data because I'm early stage, but it's accurate data, and when it's consistent enough, it doesn't matter. That's what you want, mostly for your time, but also from what's real for conveying to your investors. And our goal is to start at the bottom of the funnel as much as we can. We don't want a bunch of loose leads at the top of the funnel that we have to suss through and figure out what's real and stuff. We want qualified leads of the exact right person that we defined and have intentionally gone after. I like to say we're spearfishing, not net casting. People underestimate constantly what it means to support a prospect into a customer through the full sales motion, and then they're on from different industries and different walks of life, which is why we're aiming at a very homogenous customer base. It seems like, well, I do kind of the same thing for everyone. Even though I'm an industry agnostic tool, I could kind of serve over here, over here, over here. Right now I'm working with a document management company that's like, we're doing document management no matter where we're at, Jeanette. Is it really that important? Well, you tell me, guys. What's it like to sell into healthcare versus selling over here in manufacturing? Because I know you have both of those customers. Oh, they're way different. Oh, go on. Selling them is way different. Supporting them is way different. Like, we unpacked it. And it was like, imagine having even 5 different customers. Then how do you do your touch points? How do you do all those things? Like, it gets weeded fast. And there's nothing repeatable because every sales motion was different. So you have a limited number of resources. You have to manage all these different processes. You're trying to keep your head on straight. And we're coming correct here. So now I got to speak everyone's language, because what they speak in healthcare linguistically is not what they speak in manufacturing. And if you haven't been reading up on the fun knowledge work science of the modern era, context switching kills us. It makes us more exhausted and duller. It's very hard to do well in a long-term setting. So every time we switch context from what we're working on and focused on, to the people we're talking to the different settings we're trying to frame context switch in, trust me, you have to do plenty of it anyway. Minimize what you're choosing to do for the benefit of your mind, your energy, and your company and its focus. So I've been talking all day about how we're not selling to our whole TAM because that would be watered down and nonsense. Let's get into those details. Breaking it into 3 simple buckets. There's the Mr. Ms. Wrong, Mr. Ms. Right, and the Mr. Ms. Right now. The wrongs are easy to spot. Who's not a good fit? Who maybe, is not compatible with what you need. Their parent company owns the competitive solution that they'll always have, any of those things. Who is a good fit? Mr. Ms. Right is probably who you had in your mind's eye when you designed your solution. You can envision them using it day to day. They're so happy in your mind. But when you get an MVP ready to sell, you're like, all right, I got to sell this thing. It's not exactly what I dreamed of when I built it, but I have to start getting revenue. Brass tacks. Okay, well, let's figure out who's going to find value from that right now today. So the ICP exercise, and the same is true with product market fit. They're not static accomplishments and you're like, check, crushed it. Now I'm off to world domination. It's layers. Crushing the ICP initially means you move on to ICP 2. Hitting product market fit in your initial stage means you move on to a new definition of product market fit as you grow into more stages. There's lots of fun literacy out there about product market fit through stages. So what we're doing when we're focusing on creating an ICP for you is figuring out who's the best fit right now. Like your baby might be ugly as far as your MVP isn't what you wanted to start selling yet because you wanted to build it out more, but here we are. Let's figure out who's going to have the value derived of this to be elated, even if it's not finished and polished. And I don't mean finished and polished in a way that it's not functional or effective. I mean it's not finished and polished in all the ways you're still dreaming up in your product roadmap. There's still value in what you have, or it wouldn't be a minimum viable product. Viable equals some value delivered, right? So we're going to focus on who's right now and not who's right forever. And this is a thought experiment that I like when we're thinking ICP, because I've been talking ad nauseum about the narrowness of it today. But let's imagine your whole TAM shows up on your front lawn and they're waving orders at you. Like, we're ready to buy, all of us, right now. A moment of excitement followed immediately by that's unrealistic. We can't sell to them all. We would die immediately. There's no way. Who do you bring to the front of the line and why? It's the same activity done in the inverse. Who is the most ideal fit for the value you have today, for the support infrastructure, for the credibility they need, for the people you want to spend time with? Who do you bring to the front and why? This is what we're going to be doing as we think through ICP. We can't serve them all. And it's obviously not everyone waiting in a stocked pond for you. It's you going and finding them. So if you're going to put forward the hardest effort, which is earning a conversation with the right person, let's make sure that when we earn that conversation, they are the right person, because we've done the research as to why they're most likely to be. And our probability of finding fit is as high as we could possibly manufacture before we speak to that actual person. And then another thing, because the risks to the line are what we've been talking about. You have a non-homogeneous group of customers, you have to manage and service them all, and it becomes more burdensome to do a smaller volume with the resources you have. But just to be clear, on my last point, this is not the field of dreams. If you build it, they will not come. You have to go and acquire customers. If you're going to have an inbound funnel that's effective and not distracting, save it for later. It doesn't mean you can't take inbound leads today situationally. I'm saying don't put efforts and monies towards driving inbound. That's not spear phishing. That's net casting. It's going to leave you responding to all kinds of different things that may or may not even be a fit, but now you're kind of obligated to give them some time and try to see if it could be a fit, and that's just going to end poorly. I've seen it too many times. So thankfully, they don't just come all waltzing in, sort of like double-sided there, but you do get to be choosier because you don't have a chance of doing it well without. When we think about this a little bit further, one of the ways I like to speak to it, and this goes back to earlier when I was like, you have a subsegment, they're not all equal, what makes them different? I call those early adopter traits. Early adopter traits are signals that the people within this subsegment share our worldview already. We don't have time to educate these cats, affectionately, because when do you get educated about something that you're just now perceiving as a problem to then be like, I'd like to spend to solve that problem I just became aware of? It's not how we work, especially when we're representing a business and making decisions on behalf of a business entity. Instead, we're looking for people already showing us they're spending to improve, solve, they have an objective around what we help with. We're just a mechanism to do that they haven't discovered yet. So what's an example of this? I was working with a company in Canada, and they made an innovative solution, because a lot of people are like, how can I find people that want what I have when they don't even know my offering exists? So this is an innovation. Their innovation is they have a system and a solution where employers' contributors to a 401k can be rerouted to go towards a mortgage or student loans to help immediate financial strain from employees, and they can opt to have that allocated differently so that they just have choice over where the company's contribution goes towards their financial health. Fun, cool, right? And so no one's looking for that because they don't have a clue that exists. We can still see signals from the outside. Right away, I'm not going to the people with the worst Glassdoor ratings. They're not going to go above and beyond in this unique and new way. I'm going best places to work. I'm looking at people who specifically offer unique and different benefits. I'm going to go look at those benefits and see which of them go above and beyond in a critical way that also don't have anything like this, which we know they don't. But by buying extra benefits beyond the baseline, by being a best place to work, which doesn't happen on accident, even on the list that are pay to play, they have to pay. That means they want that impression. That means they understand the value of retention. They understand the cost of talent acquisition. They're sending me all kinds of signals that they want something innovative to continue to differentiate them as a place to work for the talent they hope to earn and hold. Great. A simpler example is, let's say I came up with the best Wi-Fi for air travel. Knock your socks off Wi-Fi, easy use, streaming live, all that good stuff. I'm not going to Spirit first. Yeah, they need the most help, arguably. But I'm not going to assume that they're sitting there going, you can have Wi-Fi in airplanes? We just didn't know. That's why we don't have it. And I think they do now. This might be a little dated, but barely. It's new to them. I'm headed straight to Abu Dhabi. The Emirates Airlines, reclining seats, full of rooms. I was like, you're going to have the best of the best. You probably have the best alternate air flight Wi-Fi now, but you're immediately going to buy what I have because it's better, and your audience deserves that and wants that. So who are their customers? What is their standard of expectations around their service level and how luxury it is in this case? We can do the same things with businesses. This is one of the hardest parts of your ICP profile. Getting small is already hard. Getting early adopter traits that actually differentiate the subsegment from one another is very hard because our minds don't think like that. And when we get it nailed down, it's money. It unlocks so much for us. What I often get written to me on applications for my program and stuff in the early adopter traits ICP section is this person's forward thinking. They're very innovative in their mindset. They're going to be open to adopting new technology. And I'm well, as soon as I have telepathy, I'm ready to use this. How would I know that they're a forward-thinking person? And it doesn't mean that I don't want that. Those are all true things I would like to find in the prospect I'm targeting. I just can't see that. I'm not mind reading. and they don't have a badge on their LinkedIn that tells me early adopter. Instead, I have to look for signals. So when I'm looking for them, and I have these clearly defined signals of the list they're on, the statements they put out in their company's annual report or 10K, the objectives they're tasked with, any kind of like PR, a hire in a role that is oriented around what I'm doing. So maybe I'm an analysis tool and they're hiring a new business analyst. It's like, hey, in the world of like the Spotify mandate around adopting AI before adding headcount, are you looking for alternates to the role you have if there's a solution that can help you cross that chasm without having a new body? That's a very targeted email, especially if their company has publicly said, we're also looking for AI adoption in lieu of direct headcount when applicable, which a lot of companies are in the specific like current state of the world. And obviously we take those things into account. We're doing it right now. It will change, but right now, what matters? So just thinking through all of those early adopter things, and when you get that, it's a double-sided coin of value. Not only do you have the targeting specificity to know who you're starting with and why, you have all the fodder for personalizing your outreach. I chose to reach out to you because you're an early stage founder in Indiana working in fintech, and I noticed you're like seeking or opening a raise, and you probably need to have a strong traction narrative. I help founders demystify sales. Is that something on your radar? Now it's like, wow, this email has all of these facts about me that are true and specific, you know, and that wouldn't be my whole email per se, but like just spitballing out loud. This seems like something I should at least read through, which is a hard enough burden to accomplish today. So yes, the early adopters are part of a technology adoption curve, which is just like, it is both their ability to do that and also like to be an early adopter and their mindset and willingness to, but also the outward signals, which is what we're looking for. All right, guys, I want to get to questions. So I've got a few things I'm going to zip through because they're not novel and you're going to see it in the template I'll leave behind with you. And we've been talking through all of these today and at large. We start with the companies before we get to the people at those companies and the impact. Now, this one I want to hone in on a tiny bit, which is why people buy. The first four are the 4 reasons why any business would buy. Make money, save money, competitive advantage or market share, and then compliance or avoiding risk. Those, you know, same thing said differently. Now, the last one, emotion, is more of a consumer buying trait. Like, I don't want to be the only one in my friend group with the green bubbles. I'll mess up our group text. Like, I'm going to buy an iPhone. Like, that's just me being emotional. If you're a purchaser on behalf of a business, it answers to the P&L. You don't just get to make, like, gut decisions. So you have to have something there. So it's not that business actors aren't emotional people. It's that they have to act on behalf of the business. The others, you know, you hear a lot of value propositions around time savings. It's not that that's not value. What are they going to do with the time? You should know these people so well that you should be able to, like, journal a day in their life, open the tabs they'd have on their computer, know what they talk about when they meet with the person they report to. So what is the time being used for instead? Is it revenue generating time? Is it reducing compliance risk time? You know, like, what are we doing with that? Pull it all the way through to the actual value. And the first two seem like the same thing said differently, but just to point out one example of where they're not. Saving money is something many companies feel like they can do readily. I need to cut 10% of my spend, slash a few jobs, do this, cut a few softwares out, delay some bill payments. Making more money is something that's more difficult in most companies' eyes. How do I drive revenue without just growing expenses crazy? So sometimes when you could position your solution either way, one of them is going to lend more to your audience. Now, some very low margin industries are very in tune with saving money because they don't have other things they can do. It's just about getting the expenses down. So it's situationally dependent. So that's why they're both there uniquely. The other thing is we talked a little bit about different buying roles, but not a lot. And again, I wish I could impart everything on you in a day. That'd be dope. Spoiler alert, you start with the economic buyer, and then you back into everyone else who might be part of the buying process. But Jeanette, the economic buyer, I never talk to them. They're just behind the scenes, and they just sign up. Doesn't matter. You need to know them too. You need to know how you're going to message through your person to them. You need to know how to write to their value props, which are going to be different than the users and even what I like to call the evaluators, often called the champions, but I don't think they're always on my team. So like those champions or evaluators that are going to be evaluating fit in the usage, they want more tactical details. Economic buyers like, give me the brass tacks. What does it save, make, you know, protect, those types of things. So start with economic buyer because you can never go without not knowing who that is. It also helps you know where to target and start conversations. Grow into other buying roles. I'm going to give you a template it's going to walk through, but that's what we've been talking about. So the last thing I'll say on this slide is we We certainly don't want to have anecdotal feedback drive these hypotheses. This is about scientific method. You don't see scientists walk into a lab and just grab some chemicals on the way and say, hope I don't blow up. See what happens. They're on the shelf. Don't do that with your market. Have hypotheses. Be specific. We have too much research readily available to not have clear intentions about what we're going to hopefully learn or prove. And then be open to learning we're wrong, but at least we hit the streets with clear, hypotheses. And the other thing here is with your ICP, we've talked a lot about external factors. What do we need to see in a company or a person at that company to determine fit? You also have to be a little selfish. What's the sales process as it pertains to the runway? Are we setting ourselves up for failure? What is the amount of revenue I could stand to gain, and how much effort am I putting in, and does that even make sense? Because if I'm going to climb a mountain to get a penny, obviously an exaggeration, but it don't. I can't do that, let alone a bunch. So we need to have things match our internal agenda as well. And so a lot of the things I've been saying, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, but at risk, messaging is one of my favorite things to go to market, a la marketing style, that's where we really start to blend. No one cares what you do yet. If I waltzed up to you and said, hi, I'm Jeanette, I run a 16-week program called the Revenue Accelerator. It costs this much money, it's for early, and it's virtual, and I would be your coach, and we'd talk about all things revenue. You're just like, Jeanette, miss me, so much. If I was like, hey, yeah, well, I get to work with early stage founders and demystify sales. My passion is helping them find repeatable sales because everything comes after that, whether it's investment or just their success. Well, then if you're an early stage founder working on sales, you're going to be like, how do you do that? Because you care. And if you don't care, then I don't need to tell you all that other shit. So it's about what you do for them. Let them tell you if they care. Earn the right to get into a two-way conversation about the details. This means you don't get to talk about what you're doing, which is very unsatisfying, but very important. We're going to come correct, and slow is smooth is fast. So I gave Ashley permission to share these slides with all of you. So we can. The last thing I'll leave this with, and we'll just switch to questions, is I have an ICP template that you can download, and this is also where it'd be really effective if you take a stab at it and come back and meet with me when you're ready, and I'm happy to share my time with you. And then if you're interested in learning more about the program I run, which is not why I'm here, but is open, and I'd be happy to talk with you about that too. Our website's easy to find, multiple QR codes. Thank you for listening. All right, let's make this make sense. Hit me with some real questions about why this shit gets hard or anything you're curious about. Yes.
So I know that, person with the money makes a decision because they got to pay for it. But when you have a client champion and they hire you, you still have an ecosystem to roll out, at least I do, a product into. And not everybody in an organization always wants you there.
Right.
And they may try and keep you from showing up before you even make the sale. Do you deal with that? How would I deal with that?
Here's how I think about it, because this is not uncommon. The economic buyer is sort of never involved directly, right? So knowing them intimately and starting with them when possible is still what I'd prefer to do. Imagine these two scenarios. I go to the economic buyer, I say, hey, and I speak their language for my solution, which is much more to the higher level of brass tacks. Most of the time I work with title, role, responsibility of person on their team to evaluate if it's a fit, but I wanted to make sure this is something that would be on your radar. Economic buyer passes it down to champion evaluator person. Now, champion evaluator person just got a task from someone above them, so they're going to look into it. And if they like it and go back to economic buyer has already passed it on as a to-do. Meaning, if there wasn't a price in the world that would make sense for them to say yes to, why in the hell would they waste their time of their colleague and spin their wheels? So there's a chance here. And if that person comes back and says, I love this, I think this would be awesome, we have the table set with the economic buyer about what you already tasked me to evaluate this. Now let's play that back again. We start with the champion/evaluator. They're loving it. Gang, gang. We talk their language. It's more in the details. We even give them the right lingo to speak the economic buyer's language. And sometimes we have to go this way, and we will if we have to. They go up the chain to the economic buyer, and they're like, oh my gosh, I just found this awesome solution. It's going to help me do this and this. Here's some info on it. Can we talk about if it's viable? Like, what the hell are you doing out here? We didn't talk about this. This is we were not talking about this. This is not in the budget. This is not your job. Get back to work. Now, I'm not saying people talk to each other like that, but the sentiment tracks. And so even if we know we're going to get zippy zip right through the economic buyer and just passed on It's a really nice framework to start from because we have a table set for approval. We're not trying to sell through people. It's a much more direct path. Every time I've had this tested, it proves to be true. Now, when they're truly not involved, it doesn't mean it's easy or that they'll engage. But there's a method to like saying we start here and we don't say that, but we'll offer to be passed through to the right person. And when you have to sell up internally, it's just about making sure we empower those people with small amounts of information very specific to the economic buyer. Because otherwise we're asking them to hold our narrative forward, which is a failed experiment. Like they're playing telephone. Don't work. Doesn't matter how well-intentioned they are, it doesn't work. And one of the other things I really like is anytime you have an opportunity to break the sales mold, do it. Be different. And don't be traditional salesy. So whenever I get to an economic buyer and I'm passed on to someone else, especially if that someone else and I are working together to like work through some stuff and try some stuff out, especially if it's like a trial or pilot, I'll shoot an email to the economic buyer like halfway through and be like, subject line, no action needed. Music to my ears. Then, just wanted to say, really enjoyed connecting with so-and-so. We've got this cooking. We'll keep you updated. It's been great. We're going to see if he or she thinks it could be a fit. Now I'm on their radar and I'm keeping in touch.
I'd like to add just a little bit of information to that or color commentary.
Good.
When you are an early stage or small business, oftentimes it's going to be really important for you to understand how long it takes a company to pay, right? So if they're paying at 120 days, which some companies do now, you may not have the runway to wait 120 days to get their payment. And so talking to that economic buyer and trying to identify that early on can help you move forward to the next person who's going to pay net 30. So there's a lot of information you can get from that economic buyer that can be really beneficial. The other thing that I had experience with my startup is understanding when a manager can buy your product without going up the chain, and can you bring your price down to $10 below that so that they don't have to get 15 different approvals. The economic buyer can oftentimes tell you that information. Yeah, they'll talk to you about it. They'll tell you about their process. They'll say, yeah, that seems like something that Jeanette would be super interested in, but that's Jeanette's decision because she buys, she doesn't have to get my approval for anything less than $5,000. That's great. You go in and sell it to her for $4,900. So there's a lot of value there.
Concur. Other questions? Yeah, good.
So what sort of techniques for, getting that sort of deep understanding of your customer do you help people do? I mean, I kind of talk about a lot of stuff with people too, and one of the quotes that someone I learned a lot from said that customers will buy from you when they feel understood, not when they understand you. So and your examples fit into that, right? You don't walk in and start talking about yourself and your features and all your stuff, right? You kind of go through that. But I try to figure out, and maybe there's new ways and with technology and stuff, how can you really figure out, because I know kind of who my ideal customer is at a certain level, but to really get that deep understanding, like you said, what's the first website they open when they wake up in the morning?
Yeah.
I didn't just talk to them, but what kind of things do you work with your clients to kind of build that understanding?
For sure. I mean, one, if you're doing research around customer discovery in the world of today, do not hesitate to put into like ChatGPT or your large language model of choice, like I run company, insert URL. I'm passionate about solving this problem. I think I'm working with description of ICP with as much detail as you can muster. Tell me what factors of fit are important. Tell me what criteria that differentiates them. It's not perfect, and we put a critical eye on it. Hard emphasis on that. It gets us thinking outside of the box. Because what we're not doing is reinventing a wheel of sub-segmentation or industry analysis about what subsegments are different and why. So let's borrow ideas and then start noodling on them ourselves. So in one vein, we're going to research a bunch to start towards that end. Now that's not novel or rocket science. Some of the things that go further with those research, like one of my favorite things is start listening to podcasts for that industry that they would listen to. You're not necessarily going to learn their day as much, but you will get inklings of it that are much more nuanced. You'll also really improve the language you're speaking relevant to their language. Which acronyms are understood and don't need explained? What kind of lingo are they talking about? What are the hot topics of today? I will also find myself deep in a Reddit thread. There's a lot to leave behind there. There's also some good learnings. It's just getting a vibe for how people are talking when they're talking shop. And then I think, the more you can have feedback loop intimate relationships where you might have shadow opportunities for use with early customers and stuff, does give you some intimate knowledge, whether that's a digital shadow or a physical one. Whenever there's something like that, or even if there's people that aren't customers but have a day, like are in those shoes, maybe as a user, and they'll let you shadow them or they'll talk to you more on a more personal level, all of that is extremely valuable. Because even if I come to a conversation, I'm like, hey, I was talking with someone that's basically like you but somewhere else, and they told me this, or I saw them do this. Is that true for you? Now we're validating. So more than anything about discovery, it's like research, have really well-formed hypotheses, go validate. And just to paint the contrast there, not that you're implying you do anything other, but a lot of founders think, I'm just gonna go talk to everyone, and I hope that when I start to get that feedback loop going, where my ICP is will just kind of shake out and become clear to me. Doesn't happen like that. You're just gonna get a bunch of TAM feedback loop that says, hey, this is possible someday, somehow. Hey, this is possible someday, somehow. Hey, all this is possible. And you're gonna be like, I have learned so much, and I don't feel any closer to the answer. When instead, if you have a clear hypothesis, like you're walking into a lab like a scientist, it's like, I thought when I talked to you, you said this, or I shadowed you, I saw this. Is that true for Ashley in the same shoes? Oh, it's not. Not true for all. Find another person. How likely is it to be true or not? Is Ashley the outlier, or is it really hit or miss in this pocket and it's not a consistent factor? Things like that. Go ahead.
Of course, I have to add to this.
Do it.
The other thing that you need to be really careful with is make sure that you're comparing data that you're getting from very specific roles. A lot of times you'll cross-function, you'll talk to cross-functional people, and don't conflate the information you're getting from a variety of different roles, because you're not going to learn anything that way. I'm going to give you an example. When I had my startup, I could sell into the doctor's offices all day long, but the caregivers who are actually in charge of rolling it out, which I think gets to your question, Jeff, they didn't want anything to do with actually utilizing the product. The reason being, they felt like they were threatened that this product would take over their role or decrease the importance of their role. And so if you talk to doctors and case managers and these other people, you're not necessarily going to really hone in on what is the challenge that I'm having with actually executing on this. So make sure you're very clear and that you're listening to whatever emotions that they're talking to you with, because they're never going to come out and tell you, ugh, that threatens my position, I'm not going to do that. You have to really listen to them.
I know we're over our time. Do we want to? Any other questions? I mean, I'm not in a rush, but I know you guys are doing big things.
Our sales cycle, our sales cycle is very long.
Yeah.
Like pharma and large regulatory things like that. So while we're going through, like, for example, one of the companies we're going through right now, they have a procurement process. It takes 6 to 9 months. Okay? So as a startup, our heart's beating this fast while they're just slow and they're at rest. And so us trying to figure out a way to balance where we're still adding value during that procurement cycle to our buyer, to the buyer and procurement team. Procurement team is really good shit about what the buyer wants, right? They just want to go through the process, check all the boxes, and say yes or no, you can buy them. But we want to make sure that our buyer and the groups that are there are being supported and we're still seeing. Well, do you have any tips on, like, what is the proper way to not to remain in contact and not over add value? I guess is the best way of saying it. Like, already start doing the work when you haven't really gotten through the procurement.
When you say they need supported, are we kind of saying we want to just make sure we don't escape their mind and we stay top of mind for them, nurturing them through that process?
Yeah, and like the solutions, the things that they're doing are extremely important to us and very interesting. So it's very like we want to be involved as early as possible in their processes and their thought process.
Yeah, I mean, I'd look for opportunities to think about how staying up to date with what they're doing is both non-burdensome to them, but helps you be more prepared to hit the ground running when you're past procurement. So framing things like this have to be for them, not for us. And not that they can't be two-way in terms of like what actually transpires, but if we're saying, hey, it's been 2 months, procurement things seem to be progressing nicely. Want to make sure we're still just as ready to hit the ground. If they have any outside facing like PR or announcements or anything you can see about a change that's happening or something going forward, or even just something relevant, it's like sparked me to think of you. Just want to make sure like what's changed, how are we doing? Last we talked, we were thinking about this as initial deployment. Are there new initiatives on the radar? Even just a soft touch in an inbox that gives them something like, I'm here for you. I want to make sure we're prepared. We both know what's happening on the side, stuff like that. And so we want to look for those opportunities to truly be helpful to them. An alternate way, which isn't as direct, would just be like industry shift. It's not that they're not also focused on the industry, but as someone who's specifically very honed in on every moving and shaking part of your world and this like segment within it, if something transpires in a PR sense, you can float it to them and be like, don't know if you saw this big release, this is happening, here's our take on it. Just want to keep you in the loop since you're our partners now. It's just a friendly way to add value that doesn't require their time, which is like what people hate the most. And when this is done wrong, it's like, why don't we have a meeting just to check in, see what's happening? I'm not implying you do that, but it's hard to resist asking for their time when we want to know what's going on, but also like, they're like, for what? We've already said yes to you. We put you in the process. Like, what do you want from us? So if we can make it about them and their objectives and us being helpful earlier in a very specific way that makes sense to us too, good. Otherwise, the fallback is like an update on how the process is going, and just an open offer is like anything changed on your end that we want to stay up to date on so that when it's done, we remain ready to go. Which I get it, the same thing sort of said differently, but it's a lighter touch. And it doesn't even require a response. It's just also like, I'm here. Don't forget, and I'm here. And that's really the purpose, right?
Okay, any other questions? Jeanette will be around for a few minutes afterwards, so.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, so thank you, Jeanette. I always love showing up to her talks. I think she's just really great. I do want to thank you all for coming and spending a little bit of time with us here for Learn at Launch. And I want to also ask you all, if you've got topics, speakers, or knowledge gaps that you would like to hear a speaker talk about, please let me know. We are going to continue having programming, and we're adding more and more programming. So I really want to know what you need and how we can help you grow your business. Okay? Thanks, everybody.